Hi everyone, this is Miss Dennison and I'm really looking forward to getting started. Like I said, I know it's going to be very weird with us starting the year like this together, but I'm hoping that this will take the place of in-person communication until I get back from maternity leave. Those of you that are watching this online, if you have any questions for me, please send me a question in Teams and I'll be more than happy to help you out. But everyone, whether you're Theater 2, Tech Theater, Theater Productions, Theater 1, we are going to start with the theater and you. And then starting next week, we'll be breaking off into specific subjects. I decided to go with this unit because there's a lot of topics that we don't normally cover throughout the year that I thought in this particular unit was important for each individual class. So by this point, everyone should be seated. You should have your binders out, ready to go. I am going to go over a few housekeeping things before we really dive into the lesson. And about 35 minutes in, you will have a 5-minute break. So just be mindful of that. I'm not about to sit here and talk for 90 minutes. So let's go ahead and move on. Before we get to the lesson, let's just continue to go over some expectations for the classroom. First thing is, have you done the bell ringer? The bell ringer was pretty simple today. The first thing you should have done when you came into class is you should have put your backpacks underneath the whiteboard, and you pick up your bell ringer notes exit ticket packet. That should be located in the classroom wherever Miss White has them for you guys. But that packet should be the first thing that you grab every Monday if you're in person. If you're online, you have a little bit more flexibility, but I would get into the mindset of doing your daily check-in. That's what it is called for in-person or for online students. And then your bell ringer. Those would be the first two things that I would do for online students. But for in-person students, you should get your packet and do the bell ringer. The bell ringer question was pretty simple today. We're actually going to talk about it in this lesson. So ask yourself, have you done it, right? Let's go ahead and get this done. These are a part of your summative grade, the test grade at the end of the 6 weeks. So those of you that have taken my class before, you know that these could really make or break your grade in this class. So it's important, just take 5 minutes out of your day and get that done. Okay. Next thing, I had to take a sip of water, guys. Next thing is, have y'all checked roll and done attendance? If you need to check roll, if everybody's been crazy and we're still getting settled in, let's go ahead and pause this video so that for the in-person students, Ms. White can go ahead and check roll. If you are not an in-person student and you're an online student, your daily check-in and doing your daily check-in is how I am keeping your attendance, right? In addition to you doing the assignment. So again, making sure that you're knocking everything out. The third thing, don't forget that the syllabus parent receipt form is due today. If you look over on the black shelf, those of you that are in person, there's a black shelving system that has each class period on it. Whatever class period this is, you need to make sure that that signed parent receipt form is turned into the tray. This is your first daily grade of the semester. So go ahead and take some time to turn it in, and then Ms. White, if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do so. For my online students, the syllabus form, parent receipt form, is actually located as an assignment in your Teams. And so that it is a Microsoft form that your parent is supposed to fill out. And the link and everything is provided on there. So that is due for online students at 11:59 tonight. If you have any questions, please, 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 please message me and I will help you locate whatever it is you need to find. Okay. And so then the next thing, normally in person, I do what's called good things because I like to start out the day positive, right? I can be a pretty negative person. And so starting the day positive just sets things on the right foot for me. I don't know about you, but that's just how I like to operate. So in this next section where it says, tell me something good, what I want you to do is on your bell ringer sheet, or if you haven't done your daily check-in online students, in the box that says, is there anything you'd like me to know? I want you to write down 3 good things that have happened to you right now. These things don't have to be big, right? It can be the little things that make us feel good. You know, something like, I was able to get Starbucks this morning, or I got a haircut, or I got a drink from Sonic. You know, those are trivial things, but at the same time, they make us feel good. So on your bell ringer sheets, in-person students, and wherever you need to write down your 3 good things that have happened to you. While y'all are writing those down and giving you some time, I'll go ahead and tell you mine. Let's see, my first good thing is we are officially, as I'm recording this video, we're officially down to single digits on the number of days that our caboose, Jonah, will be here. And I'm over being pregnant. I'm very much ready to not only have my son here, but also to get back into the classroom and see you guys. And I like to be on top of things and organized. And so I'm ready for him to be here and us get into that groove as a family, and then get it back into it as a teacher, because I miss being in the classroom a lot. Okay, the second thing would be, let's see. The second thing could be my son, my oldest son, Jacob. He has been home now for about a week and a half. I am divorced and remarried. And so my oldest son I have joint custody of my oldest son. So he goes and does extended summer with his dad for about 3 weeks. And then he comes to my house for 3 weeks. And so we are currently in that extended summertime. So having him here constantly is really good for me and for his brother, Alex, and my husband. And so I like that he's here. And my third good thing is my husband. He's been helping me around the house and with the boys, meanwhile getting ready to go back to work. Remember, he's a teacher too, and building stuff for me and just being awesome. And it's so cool whenever you are able to have life and celebrate life with someone you love and care about. And I get to do that every day. And so those are my 3 good things for the day. So now that I'm done rambling about my good things, by the way, it's very weird to talk to my desk and my computer with no one in the room. I feel like a crazy person. We're going to move on to the word of the day. This is something new that I wanted to implement this year, just because when it comes to vocabulary words, I do believe having a strong vocabulary in any subject is important. However, I also believe in the power of you finding these definitions yourself versus me just giving you a definition and expecting you to memorize it. So there's going to be some key words throughout the year that I want you, after we do the lesson and on your exit ticket, I want you to formulate what you believe the definition of that word is based off of the text and the lesson that we have the day before. And of course, we're going to go over everything. You know, I'm going to make sure that you were successful. Remember, that's one of my promises to you. But also, what I want you to do is I want you to keep that word in mind. We are starting off the year with the word theater because this is theater class. And I want to know what you think that word means, right? Don't come up with a definition right now. Even my veterans do not come up with a definition right now, right? Wait till after the lesson. And then use that opportunity to come up with your definition. Make sure too that the definition is all encompassing, right? Because I'm going to ask you, you know, what evidence do you have to credit your definition? You know, how are you able to formulate that definition based off of the information that I give you in the lesson? So, be able to back up your answer is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, the word of the day is theater. Kind of reminds me of Sesame Street, you know, when they were like the letter of the day. That was just what I was thinking when I did this. Oh, goodness. All right. Fun fact about theater. If you notice when I spelled it on the video, theater is spelled Theatre. Well, there's actually two different versions of theater that a lot of people aren't familiar with. First of all, the first one, the way that I have it spelled, typically means theater, the performance. And that's the simplest definition. That is not an all-encompassing definition, so do not use this definition. But this is just a quick way for you to remember. This might even be a bonus points question later on in the year. So theater spelled or ending in RE represents the performance, the actual action of theater, while theater spelled ER for an ending is the building. So, you know, in a normal world, you would go into a movie theater, right? That's where you would go and watch something. So it represents the building and the location. So that's just a little fun fact about that word. So yeah, usually that's one of the big things that a lot of my students remember leaving my class. So if that's the only thing that you remember, so be it. By the end of the day today, these are the three things that we're really going to cover. First and foremost, we're going to talk about, these are out of order, so forgive me. We're going to talk about how you are connected to theater. And again, this is a sentence that applies to every single person that is in my classes, whether you are a seasoned performer or you're a kid that's just in here to get that fine arts credit and you heard that this was going to be an easy class, right? How you are connected to theater, either as a performer or as an audience member. We're also going to talk about why theater is important, you know, or why we believe theater is important, right? This is definitely an opinion on why theater is important. This is something that I feel strongly about, and you're allowed to formulate your own opinions, but today I am pleading my case with you on why theater is important. And then the last thing, we're really going to focus on this more on the next time that you're with me in the next class period. We're going to talk about creativity and the power of creativity, and also who has it, because there's kind of some stigmas associated with it. And so my goal at the end of this unit is for you to rethink if you're creative or not. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. All right, the first thing, hopefully I can get my audio working on this. The first thing that I'd like to show you guys today is from a clip of a show. Show is called Stomp. You probably saw it in junior high in like a music class or something to that effect. But this was a show that when I was in band, by the way, I played the drums, and I was really proud of myself. When I watched this show as a kid, I loved and recognized immediately the individual characters and what each individual character brought to each song. Everything in this show is more or less nonverbal. They rely on their bodies as well as everyday objects to create percussive music. And so this is one of my favorite scenes of the show. It's towards the end of the show. And so I want you to think about, as you're watching this, I want you to think about that, the looks you see from each of these performers, and also think about what it would be like as an audience member for this performance. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but we're going to watch a good chunk. So sit back and enjoy. Let's get You heard somebody in the background try to clap along. This guy on the end. I can get oh no, I'm not gonna skip. We're just gonna keep going. Notice it only gives them a little bit of dirt. play provides his own. Let's go. So just to give you, I love this clip. Every time I watch this clip, I think of like the drum line or, it gets me pumped up. And hopefully you felt that too as you were watching it and you were really kind of getting into the beat. But I loved this last little part because to me, like where they all come up and they do their own thing, to me, this is a really easy representation of theater and the collaboration or the coming together of individuals with their own strengths and their own talents that they're able to bring to the table. And if you notice, they all did something different when they came up individually and they did their own rhythm. They put their spin, their talents, their rhythms, they put their own thing into this overall performance and created something awesome. And I love that. That's what draws me to performing arts. And that's what draws probably many of you to performing arts, is the fact that, you don't have to just be an actor. You don't just have to be a person that enjoys hair and makeup or who likes to sing or who likes to draw. You can have many different talents, and with the right team, right, with the right ensemble, you're able to come together and create something beautiful. And that's my goal as a director. That's my goal for this company. And it's something that we as a group in each class period have all of the capability in the world of doing and will do by the end of this year. So it makes me happy. I enjoy it. Another thing to think about in that very beginning part, when let me see if I can get a clip. When he's here with the audience, imagine being an audience member and witnessing all of this live. I feel pumped up watching it in a video. Imagine if you were watching this live. I'd probably be the ones you heard in the video, like hooping and hollering as they get started, or trying to copy the guy in the audience. Some of you were even trying to copy these people watching the video in class. You know, think about what that experience would be like for you in a live setting, right? What if they had done something different? What if they had done something what if you watch this clip and then you go watch Stomp and they do something completely different? You know, how would that change the dynamic of the performance for you? Those are just some things to be looking at as an audience member when you're watching these performances. I would love to see this live. Maybe one day we can take everyone to go see this live. Let's get to the slide. So theater is collaborative. Theater has the capability of bringing so many people together, right? And when we think about theater, you know, we think about Shakespeare. We typically think Shakespeare. We typically think Men in Tights. We typically think there's a lot of stigmas associated to the art. But what we're going to talk about now is how you're connected to it. So in today's bell ringer question, I asked you, I said, describe a typical day for you during the quarantine. You know, what were some things that you did to sort of help you cope with being stuck at home, right? I've had many different answers for this question. Some of it could be people decided to bake more. I know I did. My sister did. Some people decided to, my mom, for example, decided to redo her house and paint her whole house, you know, do some hands-on projects. But for the most part, we can honestly say that these different apps that you see here on this slide are a pretty solid representation of how we spent our time. You know, watching Disney Plus, definitely watching Netflix and all of the 800 shows that are on Netflix. Hulu. I discovered my true love for TikTok during this quarantine. And then if I personally felt like I needed to disconnect from a screen, I used my Spotify and I would just play music in my house, and still just having that music that, you know, something, it helped me get through the day, right? So what do all these things have in common? Normally I would pause and wait for you to respond. But what these things have in common is that they're all art forms, right? Many of us used these art forms to get through the quarantine, right? To cope. Some of us still use these art forms to cope, whether it's not dealing with the ins and outs of everyday life, or, you know, not wanting to be back in school again. You know, you use all of these apps to sort of cope with whatever's going on in the world, and they're all art, right? That is how you were connected to it. You depend on these forms, and these are just visual forms. These are just video forms. I'm not even getting into books and literature, which is another art form in itself. I'm mainly speaking on visual performance and visual art for this unit. So you're connected to it because you use art every day. You just don't really think about it. I like this quote that a former director friend of mine shared during the quarantine, and says, "Folks, just remember when this is all over, how Netflix, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Prime Video, audiobooks, solo concerts, etc. got you through this. Remember how the arts got you through this time." Then of course it says, "Then tell us again how non-essential they are." We're going to talk about that last sentence more in a little bit, but I mean, it's true. If you look back on your time, I mean, we started staying at home in March. So if you look back on your time and you take away all of these different things that this quote is mentioning, how would you have done? What would a typical day, how would your typical day change, right? So that's a small way of how to show how you are connected to the arts. You should have your notes out, hopefully. I should have said that earlier. But behind your bell ringer sheet was your notes sheet. So you should have that out. And go ahead and just fill in the blank as we follow along. Miss White, if she needs to pause the video, she absolutely can. But art, and we are referring to performance art, is something we're around all the time, right? We just decided that. Whether you're a spectator, which is another word for audience member, or as a performer, right? So the general agreement today, and again, we would have more discussion in person, but we're going to pretend that we're all in agreement just for the sake of this video, that we all consider it to be essential, right? Because we used these performance art to get through a difficult time. So even though many of us deem it essential, there's a lot of people that question the value of theater, that question the value of performing arts. If you aren't familiar with our education system, typically performing arts programs are the first to go, but yet we consider it essential. And even those people that have the power to eradicate those performing arts programs in public schools, they could also, believe in this argument that it is considered essential. So why are there people that disagree with theater? Why are there people that don't think that it's essential? We're going to talk about that. Where it really boils down to is, let's get to the root of it, right? The history of theater. We're going to be talking about theater history throughout the school year, but theater, started about 2,500 years ago with the Greeks. There was a Greek god, his name was Dionysus, and he was the Greek god of fertility and wine. And, everyone loved him, right? So they created these festivals as a way to honor him. And in these festivals, they would perform these, basically, I like to think of them as just like expressions of love towards Dionysus and just praising everything he touched, essentially. And then, of course, as it started with the Greeks, and then it eventually gets into the Roman culture and this and that, and then we get into Christian elements, and we get the Greek scriptures of the Bible, and they create these religious rituals, right, where they perform these stories and acts to represent the gods that they love and celebrate daily, or that they love and worship daily. So these religious rituals are what evolved to the plays that we see today. And like I said, we're going to get into this more, but that's just sort of the base of how theater was formulated. And of course we have musical theater, and that's all included in all of this as well. But like I said, we're touching on that later. So looking up here at the chart, you've got your defenders, those that are for theater, and you've got those that are against it. You can see that for the defenders, like myself, theater allows self-expression, even when we're not acting like ourselves, right? As an actor, you're able to connect to these characters and express yourself in a way that maybe me as Ashley Dennison would not feel comfortable doing, but me as Elphaba in Wicked could do, and that's just a stupid example, but you get what I'm saying. It also allows people to be creative. Those of us that know that we're creative and feel creative. I can only speak for myself, but I'm very much a physical actress. And so when I am given a character to play, I like to think about how that person acts, how that person, what are the mannerisms that that person has? How does that person talk to others? How do they stand? How do they walk? You know, I think about all of those idiosyncrasies that we as humans normally have, and I get to embody this completely different person. And that is so fun for me. And some of you, those of you that have performed, you probably feel the same way. So it allows us to be creative. And it also allows those of us that have more of a technical vision, whether it's costumes or lights or sounds or music, you know, it allows that creativity within the same realm. And then, of course, the third point is that theater typically can create well-rounded human beings, because as you watch these characters unfold, as you watch these stories unfold, even if you do not relate to the specific situation that's happening on the stage, you empathize with those characters, and you view characters differently than maybe you would view somebody on the street or somebody in person. Theater typically can also talk about subjects that are taboo and subjects that we don't normally talk about on a day-to-day basis. And so theater has the capability of challenging you to rethink, you know, certain opinions you may have on particular taboo subjects, you know? So by being challenged with our critical thinking and being challenged on our emotions and how we respond to things, you know, all of those things can create a well-rounded human being, you know, because we're able to connect emotionally, we're able to empathize with others, and those are just good qualities to have, right? So that's typically what the defense is from those 3 bullet points. Those that are against it, obviously from a religious standpoint, the pagan rituals that are associated with it. If you look at Christianity today, if you look at if you look at Catholicism or Roman Catholicism, you know, the fact that they sat and worshiped Greek gods all of the time. Some were even considered, once the Romans really sort of take over theater, the performances became sacrificial in a sense. And so there's a lot of good things that happened with theater, but then there's also some things that make you question, right? Especially that sacrificial art that happened during the Romans time with the theater. So the pagan rituals, that's a big concern for a lot of people. Another could be the content. I said how theater can touch on taboo subjects. Just to give you a relevant one, I mean, the most recent one would be Hamilton. A lot of you have seen Hamilton on Disney Plus, and there were a lot of people that were against the show, despite the groundbreaking efforts that it made for people of color, performers of color. A lot of people were against it because not only is it not entirely accurate historically, but also because it does not touch on, it leaves out parts of history that many people felt like needed to be addressed. And I'm not going to get into that right now. You can look up that information, or if you want to ask me, you know, well, what are you talking about? We can talk about that at a different time. But you understand what I'm saying. So the content, a lot of people watch theater or performing arts because they just want to be entertained. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to be uncomfortable when they watch something. And that's okay. but that is a reason why some might be against it. And then, of course, because of those two things, the proper society deemed it improper. That it was shunned for such a long period of time. And it was something that only low lifes and groundlings and, people who had little to no money at one point, people were like, oh, only they like theater. We're above that, so that's really sort of the main three reasons as to why you're against it. So as far as your opinion goes, what do you think of it? Which side do you lean on, and does that opinion have the ability to change? I mean, hopefully you have a respect for it by the end of the year. That would be cool. But if you don't, that's okay too. But yeah, that's just some things to think about. And, as far as the defense goes, this is why we deem theater to be important. So moving on, we're talking about theater, but there are many different things that encompass the performing arts. You've got theater, you've got live music, and you've got dance. What these live performances have in common is that they're what's called ephemeral, meaning they last only a short amount of time. So what the artist creates live can only exist in that moment. I'm going to take a water break real quick. Just to give you an example, this is a juvenile example, but when you go to a dance recital, what is everyone's favorite part typically? It's that 3 to 4-year-old ballet group or tap class where those sweet babies have never been out on stage before. And so the kids get out there and they're trying to find their spots. And you've got the one kid who's looking stage right because their teacher's in the wings and they're watching every move that the teacher's doing. You've got the kid next to her who's screaming at the top of their lungs because they know every word to this song by heart. You've got the one next to it where they're waving or trying to find mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle in the audience. You've got the fourth one who's just sat down. They've just given up on life, right? You've got the next one who's just shaking her butt, doesn't care, is just there for a good time, right? And then you've got the sixth one who is deathly afraid and is crying and regrets everything. And then you got the seventh one who's picking his nose, right? There's no way that all of those things were planned, right? There's no way that you as an audience member could have predicted what was going to happen with those kids once they got on the stage, right? It was only seeing it live that you were able to witness the humor, witness the sweet moments with these kids, right? And it's not something typically, a performing arts is not something that's typically recorded. Nowadays it's becoming more common, but it's not something that's recorded. It's something that is left in our head. It's something that it's a moment, it's a memory that we hold on to and then reflect on long after the performance has passed. So, the next year you're like, oh, do you remember that little girl that kept picking her nose during that song? You reflect on that performance over and over again. That's just an example of what happens in the moment. In music, if you go and watch your favorite musician live, they may take a moment to speak on something, that they don't speak on their album, right? They don't take time out of their album to just sit there and talk to whoever's listening, but they would in a large group setting. I've seen that happen all the time. And then in theater, anything can happen live on stage, right? If the actor's truly in the moment, they could flub up a line. They could say a line differently than what you're used to. There could be a costume malfunction. There could be a set problem. Something could break on the set, and watching how everybody reacts to that is just an example. With Stomp, the guy doing that rhythm, he may do a different rhythm every night, and that's just what we happen to see. That's what makes it so exciting as a performer, is that it could change, but that you were creating something that's unique, and you have the ability to create something that's new. So, all right. I'm going to go ahead and give us a break. All right. I'm going to give you guys a 5-minute break. So every day we're going to take a 5-minute break, and feel free to stretch, walk around. Please keep your social distancing, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean, by providence impoverished and squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar? The $10 founding father without a father got a lot farther by working a lot harder, by being a lot smarter, by being a self-starter. By 14, they placed him in charge of a trading charter. And every day while slaves were being slaughtered and carted away across the waves, he struggled and kept his guard up. Inside he was longing for something to be a part of. The brother was ready to beg, steal, borrow, or barter. Then a hurricane came, devastation reigned. A man saw his future dripping down the drain. Put a pencil to his temple, connected it to his brain, and he wrote his first refrain, a testament to his pain. Now the word got around, they said this kid is insane, man. Took up a collection just to send it to the mainland. Get your education, don't forget from whence you came, and the world's gonna know your name. What's your name, man? Alexander Hamilton. My name is Alexander Hamilton. And there's a million things I haven't done. Just you wait, just you wait. When he was 10, his father slipped, full of it, debt-ridden. 2 years later, see Alex and his mother bedridden, half dead, sitting in their own sick, the scent thick. And Alex got better, but his mother wait. Living with a cousin, the cousin committed suicide. Left him with nothing but ruined pride. Something new inside a voice saying, Alex, you gotta think for yourself. He started retreating and beating every tree that saw the shell. There would have been nothing left to do for someone less astute. He would have been dead and destitute without a cent or restitution. Started working, searching for his late mother's landlord, trading sugar cane and rum and all the things he can't afford to sell them all. Every fucking can get his hands on. Dreading for the future, see him now as he stands on the bow of the ship, heading for a new land. In New York, you can be a new man. In New York, you can be a new man. In New York, you can just be a new man. In New York, you can be a new man. In New York, just you wait. Alexander Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton. You're waiting in the wings, for you waiting in the wings. You can never back down, you never learn to take your time. Oh, Alexander Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton. America sings for you. Will they know what you overcame? Will they know you broke the game? The world will never be the same. He's in the harbor now, see if you can spot him. Another river is coming up from the bottom. Destroyed his red from America, we got him. We fought with him. I died for him. I trusted him. I loved him. And me, I'm the damn fool that shot him. There's a million things I haven't done. Just you wait. What's your name, man? Alexander Hamilton. I may not live to see our glory. I may not live to see our glory. But I will gladly join the fight. But I will gladly join the fight. And when our children tell our story. And when our children tell our story. They'll tell the story of tonight. Let's have another round tonight. Let's have another round tonight. Let's have another round tonight. Raise a glass to freedom. Something they can never take away, no matter what they tell you. Raise a glass to the four of us. Tomorrow there'll be more of us, telling the story of tonight. Raise a glass to freedom. Something they can never take away, no matter what they tell you. Let's have another round tonight. Raise a glass to the four of us. Tomorrow there'll be more of us, telling the story of tonight.
All right, guys, so time is up. You should be, go ahead and make your way back to your seats, and then we are going to move forward. Okay, so normally when we watch a show, we're going to be talking about theater basics more. So you're probably seeing some of these words like props and set design and that. You're probably seeing these for the first time, and that's okay. But normally when you watch a show, there's two things that we primarily look at. And those two things are the actors and the story, right? You watch the actors to learn more about the story, and you follow the story along. But there's so much more to it than those two things. If you look at this image from Hamilton, and by the way, there are more shows out there. I'm just picking this show because this is a show that everyone knows and is currently obsessing on. And I liked the lighting example. It provides a really good notion to what I'm about to talk about. There's so much more to just the actors and the storytelling. There's many different elements, people working behind the scenes to create this art, right? So you actually have your writer, this guy right here. We'll talk about more of him later on in the year, but he is your writer, right? But then he relies on these actors to tell the story that he's created based off of this historical character. And then he relied on the set designer to match the time period of the piece, right? And the set design, if you have watched this show, you would know that these stairs over here, they move throughout the show to provide some depth to the stage. Also, you can see this groove line right here. This is a turntable. This show is a predominantly hip-hop rap show, right? So it's paying homage to the genre that is being represented in the show by having a turntable. And, you know, things will turn in the back. Actors will turn on this turntable, meanwhile staying perfectly still. And it's like you're changing their perspective, right? So he relied on a set designer. He also relied on the guy. Oh, let me go back. He also relied on the guy who makes props, which I actually have had the privilege of talking with this guy. So I'm going to be sharing some tidbits from him for my tech theater class later on in the year. But he relied on this guy to create historical props that are relevant to the show, to create enough props that are relevant to the show, you know, to get your eye moving in a part of the scene. You can see some of these props here. He connected with the lighting designer, right, to show emphasis. Obviously, these three lights right here, who are they pointing to? Alexander, right? It is also lighting some other important characters in this scene, but the main attention, the focal point of this scene is this man right here, right? So you have your lighting, you have your hair and makeup to determine that not only the time period, but something specific about the character. This character, as he unfolds and as he ages, his hair changes. This character, as he plays two different roles, his hair changes. His hair changes, right? You'll see that throughout. And then, of course, the costumes. You get with the costume crew to determine, you know, what is important, what is historically accurate, or what is needed to help tell this overall story. So just like those performers in Stomp, each one of the people, or the persons, excuse me, that are involved in the set design, props, lighting, hair and makeup, costumes, each one of those are interdependent. They collaborated, they pulled their strengths together to create this work of art. You know, so those of you that think that theater is really for just the actors, you're wrong, right? There's so many other elements to the show, and you are such an important part of the show in any facet, you know? So don't give up on the idea that if you're not an actor, that theater isn't for you. Because if you are interested in engineering, right? If you're interested in building things, if you're interested in art, if you're interested in cosmetology, if you're interested in home economics, you know, you have a place in theater, right? How cool is that? I just think it's so cool, and it kind of tears down that barrier that theater is only for a certain group of people. Okay, so that should wrap everything up, right? We talked about why theater would be, you know, how theater would be important, how you are connected to it every single day, and the collaborations and the collaborative efforts of not only the performers, but anyone involved in theater, and how anyone can be a part of theater based off their interests and their strengths. We're going to focus more on that next class period, but now we're going to get into sort of the assessment of the class period. So at the end of your notes, you're going to have what's called key takeaways. These are so important for you to have. This goes in the notes section of your binder. But these are so important for you to have because these will help you review for your written exam at the end of the 6 weeks. So I'm going to give you guys some time, and then at the end of class, Ms. White is going to go over the answers with you to make sure that you have everything that you need. But the question one, live performances are blank, meaning they blank, right? Think about that, that E word that I used. Oops, I just gave that away. The 5 technical elements on that sheet, that Hamilton image I just showed you, listed those 5 elements for you. When did theater start? With who? Why would people hate theater? Why would people support theater? Think about when I was talking about the importance of theater. That's where you can really get your answers for these here. So your first assignment is to work on these key takeaways, both in-person and online students. And then the last thing, I'm not going to keep the screen up on key takeaways because you have that written down in your notes or it's on your document on Teams. The last thing is your exit ticket. Every day we're going to do an exit ticket. 2 of the questions are going to pertain particularly to the content, and then one of the questions is going to pertain to a takeaway that you have from today's lesson. So if you noticed in your packet that you received, those of you that are in person, you had a bell ringer sheet, you had a note sheet, and then your last page was an exit ticket sheet. Your bell ringers go in your bell ringer tab, your notes go in your notes tab, and your exit tickets go in your exit ticket tab. And I've labeled a 1, 2, and 3. So what, at the end of this video, I'm just gonna have Miss White pause the video, and then from there, you're going to fill out these questions. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, when we do our binder checks, I will be reviewing these questions. Let's go over them real quick. Number 6, what are some differences between watching something live versus film or television? Think back on the Stomp video. I talked about some examples in, how it would feel to be an audience member. But then also think about when I was talking about the performance arts of theater, music, and dance. What are some differences? And give me 2 or 3. You don't have to give me a long list. Just give me about 2 or 3. Number 7, what is something you learned today you didn't know before? This could be anything, right? Give me a fact that you learned from today's lesson. And then, of course, question 8. After today's lesson, based off of the information that I gave you, what do you think is your definition of theater? What do you think is the definition of theater? Notice it's spelled R-E. Remember, this definition should be all-encompassing, and it should include everything. So go ahead and get started on your assignment, guys. If you have any questions, Miss White is there to help you. On these exit tickets, just do the best you can, right? This is to show what you know on the exit tickets. Once you're done with the exit tickets, everything goes back into your binder. Those of you that are online, you would just turn in the assignment each day. And then at the end of class, those of you that are in person, Miss White, again, will call on a few people or maybe all of the students to help clean up the room. We need to make sure there is no food and drink in the room, and also that the tables are wiped down for the next class period. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please let me know if you have any questions. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.